This is just me doing a quick video on credit and borrowing money to boost the economy, and why the entire idea of it is flawed fundamentally. I mean, to a certain extent everybody knows that GDP is actually flawed anyway. It doesn't really work out the way it's said. For example, if you have a street in which 10 houses are destroyed and they're each worth £100,000 each, just to make the math simple, then when those houses are rebuilt, then £1 million will be spent, and that boosts the economy by £1 million. But if those 10 people instead bought a second house, also for £100,000 each, GDP will be increased by £1 million. But the two things are very different. In one place, 10 people have had their houses destroyed and replaced, and in the second instance, 10 people own 2 properties. This is actually quite different, and it's quite important we realise that. But I'm moving on specifically to the government's claim that in order to boost the economy, we need to be able to borrow money again, and then by spending that money, they will boost the economy. Now, there are only really a couple of instances in which borrowing money and spending it actually boosts the economy in real terms over the long haul. So I'm not really interested in anything, really, and neither should we be, really, that has a short-term effect for a longer-term negative effect that won't actually work. So I'll just bash some figures into some money-saving websites. They recommend loans, which are the lowest rate of APR, and basically the way this works is as follows. So in theory, the borrowing money model goes like this. I borrow £10,000, I spend £10,000, boosting the economy by £10,000 GDP in the year that I spend the money. Then I pay the money back. Now, borrowing £10,000 for 3 years will end up me paying back £300 every month to repay £10,800, which means that in the first year, the year I borrow the money, GDP goes up by £10,000. But in the next 3 years, I will spend £300 a month on repaying that money back. And when I'm paying that money back, I'm not spending that money anywhere else. And this is quite important. So, first year GDP goes up by £10,000, absolutely true, no arguments. But in the next 3 years it goes down by £10,800 over the 3-year period, which works out just over £3,000 each year, with an extra £800 on top of interest. So in the 1 year it's gone up by £10,000, but over the 3-year period it's gone down £10,800. Net gain to the economy, negative £800. Because the money that I would be spending, I'm now spending paying back that loan. Okay. Now, and this only gets bigger if you look at bigger sums. If you look at a loan over 5 years of £20,000, that's £390 a month to repay over the 5 years, and you end up paying back £23,400. So over 5 years, the economy loses £3,400. Plus, obviously, the original loan amount. So the economy goes up by £20,000 first year, and over the second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of repaying the loan, it goes down by £23,400 for a total net loss of £3,400. Now, there are a few instances in where the economy does indeed grow by borrowing money. The situation I just described is basically Johnny pays. Johnny being the random person who's borrowing money, pays the money back the way he's agreed to, per the terms and conditions, blah blah blah. So, the second person I'm going to refer to as Johnny pays eventually. Something bad happens, so Johnny pays eventually, and he ends up not paying according to the terms and conditions. Now, this can happen for a variety of reasons. I'm not really going to get into the moral side of the argument, I just want to stick to the maths and the facts. So, what happens? The bank will contact him, or the credit card, or whoever it is, will contact him. Now, most of this will be an automated service, it'll be letters, it'll be emails and stuff like that, but he will get phone calls, and he may get visits. And these will be real people. Now, at this point, Johnny Pays Later is boosting the economy more than Johnny Pays. Because people that wouldn't have a job if everybody just paid their debt, their agreed debt, their credit, are now employed to contact Johnny Pays Later, or Johnny Eventually Pays. Okay? And depending on how far down the road this is and how much you've borrowed, this can go in multiple different routes. I mean, Third-party companies can get involved, debt collection companies, who will, the bank will pass it on to them because they have expertise in the area and the bank doesn't. And right upon now, there's an entire industry, debt collection industry, spawned by the fact that some people don't pay their credit. So at this point, Johnny Pays eventually, or Johnny Pays later, whichever one you prefer, is boosting the economy. But Johnny Pays, the guy who took the loan out and just pays it back, isn't. Okay. And I mean, obviously, there's more strands down the path there as well, because Johnny Pays eventually, the debt can be sold on from the bank to a debt purchasing company, another whole industry created by the fact that some people just don't pay their debts back in time, for whatever reason. And then we come to the third person. Now, third person is called Johnny Never Pays. Simple as that. He borrows the money, he spends it, he boosts the economy, but he doesn't pay back. So what happens with Johnny Never Pays? Well, Johnny Never Pays is literally boosting the economy. He borrows £10,000 in year one, he spends it, £10,000 into the economy. Over the next 3 years, he's not paying it back, which means all of his money is being spent on stuff. Doesn't matter what it is, because you're going to spend money. If you've got money, you're going to spend it. Just buying food and just buying your food, your clothes, getting your petrol for your car, getting your car MOT'd, presume you do that. If you're not paying your debts, maybe you won't, I don't know. Getting it insured, all that kind of stuff costs you money, which boosts the economy. So, year one, Johnny Never Pays, boosts the economy with £10,000. The 3 years he should be repaying it, but doesn't, he's boosting the economy as much as he ever was. And if he could afford to repay the loan at £300 a month, he's now only boosting the economy by another £3,000 odd pounds, or £3,600 a year that Johnny Pays will not be boosting the economy by. So, the reality is, for real boosts to the economy, we need people to borrow money and not pay it back. That's how it works. There is, of course, a side effect to this. What happens is, the more Johnny Never Pays that are out there, the higher the banks and the credit card companies have to put their interest rates to get the money back from the people who are paying, which pushes more people from Johnny Pays into Johnny Pays eventually. Because bear in mind that there's three categories, and I'm mixing them up. And there's obviously going to be moral constraints, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, Johnny Pays eventually is probably falling on hard times. He's struggling to pay. Maybe the interest is a bit too high. Maybe bad stuff's happening in his life. He's lost his job. Doesn't matter. He does pay eventually. And there is, of course, the possibility that Johnny Pays eventually will actually end up paying less than he should do, whereupon he's becoming a bit more like Johnny Never Pays, because if he's not paying his loan back, he's going to be spending the money he should be paying on his loan on other stuff, which is boosting the economy. So it's a bit more complicated. The only instance where credit being borrowed and then repaid really boosts the economy is if you're borrowing money to build a business, and that's quite often the case that the government are referring to with this, but I don't make that very clear necessarily. Now the thing is that the business idea does obviously boost the economy as long as the business works. And then we go back to Johnny Pays eventually, and Johnny Never Pays if the business doesn't work. Because if a business folds, quite often it becomes Johnny Never Pays. Because a lot of businesses are limited liability, which means that if I go into trading as myself limited and my business flops, it's not me who's taking the loan out, it's my limited company that is purely me, and I can avoid any liability and not have to pay it back. Potentially, there's lots of more, it's a little bit more involved in that, but it can be done, and it is. So, where are we left? Borrowing money doesn't resolve it, and this is where the borrowing money but building a business from it does work, is because basically if you've got a business that's working, you're hiring people, they are earning money which they are spending, and the spending of their money boosts the economy, and they're not having to pay it back because they've earned it. Yeah, they've actually earned the money. It's money in their hands which they can spend. It's theirs. It's not somebody else's that they've borrowed and they've got to pay them back, and that's what really boosts the economy. So fundamentally, really, you shouldn't be borrowing money unless it's something you have to borrow money for. A house is obviously a big one. a lot of the time, if you look at buying a car, you're going to have to borrow money. But let's not put it out there as a simple, it's good to get people borrowing again. It's not as straightforward as that. And obviously, you shouldn't trust the government when they say anything, because they're all lying bastards anyway. Thank you very much, and I hope you've had fun with this. If anyone wants to put up a refutation of this, I'll be glad to see that. It'd be really interesting, but I prefer it to be purely in mathematical terms, because that's really simple to put forward. And if the government was just talking plain, simple facts and maths, then everybody would understand it, which is, of course, why they don't do that, because they can't afford to have people actually understand the situation, because then they'll be proven to be the wrong people that they are. When I say wrong, what I really want to say is liars that they really are. Well, I've said it now.